This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Monday, June 10th, 2024. Dornall, how was your week?
Hey, it's been a rough week. I'm out traveling. Circumstances out of my control have me jet setting. So I'm here on the tablet in places unknown. Um, but I've got some interesting things happening from my side of the internet in the tabletop RPG space. I'm looking forward to talking about cool action movies and stuff with you today. So, what can I say? I'm pumped. How about you?
I am so excited. And I will tell you guys why in just a little bit, but really just had a great afternoon and I am eager to share why. Um, Also, I posted a secret link in the chat that we're going to add to the show notes sometime later, um, so everybody gets it. But the secret link um, is for an episode of Dunder Moose's show. I've got a container of gum here of trident gum that is calling to me. It's calling out, and I'm having to put it aside so it's out of my line of sight because all I can think is I absolutely must not touch that during the show.
The urge to fidget is so strong.
It really is. I chew gum a lot. Um, not all the time, but when I have access to gum, I like to chew it because it freshens my breath, but um, it also gives me something to do. Uh, I moved the gum. This is when you're supposed to jump in and tell people about the secret link.
The secret link. No, I was gonna let you hang. Wait, yeah, I'm on the tablet, so we're playing with the mic mute today. Yeah, so we got a link to This is Dunder Moose. Now, for those of you who listen to the show and have been playing along, you know that we love Dungeons and Dragons. We love the crazy stuff that the Bro SR get up to when they play Dungeons and Dragons and innovate, uh, both innovate and recreate the kinds of experiences you might have found in the 60s and 70s Midwest wargaming culture. Now, the latest thing we've been up to is called a Bronstein or a Battle Bronstein, a gaming session where you sort of set aside your regular player characters and zoom out on the map a little bit. And everybody plays higher level factions or monster factions or NPC factions. And you have a little contest over some MacGuffin or a slice of territory uh, or something like that. We've talked about them before. There was the Who Caresville Battle Bronstein, um, the Merchants Battle Bronstein run by Macho Mandolph. We talked about them as they came out, at least the ones that I participated in. So on the This is Dunder Moose show, Dunder Moose had back on B-dubs and a great guest, Robert the Heel Stevens, who has won at least one, maybe two Battle Bronsteins on his own. And they sat down and they talk about the various Bronstein games that were run and reported on the internet. So check out that link. Go listen to the show. Put it on while you're mowing the lawn, like I did. It's 2 hours. It's great fun. It's just guys hanging out, talking about this thing, and they go over some of the big Battle Bronsteins, what went well, what didn't well, and rating the session reports. Plus, the guests are affable and entertaining. But don't click on it right now because you need to finish listening to the Geek Gab. No offense, no hard feelings, but we're better. It's just that simple. But that doesn't mean you can't have both.
I speaking of D&D, I made the mistake of wandering over into the 5th edition D&D videos this last week because I'm playing Baldur's Gate 5, and I wanted some tips on some stuff in Baldur's Gate 5, so I ended up listening to a couple of
3, sir.
5th edition videos, and the number of times the term build was used in reference to characters just really drove me nuts. It really makes you just, I think having character options and having subclasses and multi-classing be a thing is fine, but at the same time, this entire culture, this entire build culture, makes you want to just get rid of it from the game and take it all away for like 20 years until it all goes away and there's no such thing as builds anymore because nobody can build anything. There's just, you get a class, you stick with that class. There's no multi-classing, there's no second class, there's just one class. And like in Axe, where they have for non-humans, they have some special specific classes that are a blend of other major classes. That's it. That's what you get. There's no multi-classing or anything, and then builds are gone. There's no builds because it drove me nuts. This guy was talking about warlocks, and they're like, oh, okay, there's this one problem with warlocks and this other problem with warlocks, but in order to fix it, what you need to do is just take one level in Clerics of the Forge because they get this Forge something power, and that fixes this major hole in the class that makes it bad. Now, I am perfectly willing to concede that the Warlock class may be badly designed because, frankly, anybody could say anything about 5th edition to be badly designed, and I would just believe you based on it being part of 5th edition. And I know for a fact that modern WotC does bad game design, so that would not surprise me. But the Warlock class is a class that is predicated on you using the power granted you by some unearthly entity, a demon or a devil, a Cthulhu-esque monstrosity, some unfathomable creature of the deep, a celestial or being of the upper planes. And the thought of you being a warlock like that, while at the same time also being a cleric, just seems to me to be a violation of the rules, right? An implicit violation of what either class is about. If you're a warlock, I don't think you should be able to multi-class as a paladin or cleric, or second class as a paladin or cleric, much less freely second class as that, to just take one level to just fill in some kind of hole. And the notion of there being builds, like, oh, you want to take this particular series and then take this subclass at 3rd level and use these powers with this spell and that. I'm just like, no, that is so antithetical to even what classes should be. I'm not saying you shouldn't have skills or planning, and I don't mean skills as in, the game mechanics skills. I'm saying as a player, you should develop your skills in using the abilities your class gives you. But the essence of AD&D was you roll your attributes randomly and chose a class based on that limited selection those attributes gave you. And then, for example, for wizards, you get spells randomly based on your initial spell selection, which you roll randomly, and then what you find in the world as you're going about. And you have to develop your tactics in battle based on what spells you get. There wasn't a build because it wasn't assumed that you could freely choose what spells you had available. You were working hard against limitations. It was a matter of overcoming limitations. So I think part of this build culture comes from when you give players carte blanche from a wide menu of possible options, and they can assume you have all of these options freely available at all times, then they look to min-max everything. Whereas if you have to work within constraints and not everything is automatically available at all times, then you don't get a chance to have a build because you have to work with what you're given and kind of what shows up randomly. And that's one of the benefits of random treasure generation is that the game master isn't screwing you over. If you get something lucky, then yeah, that's great. But even spells, and you notice this when I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, is that a lot of the spells that are very damaging also have an area of effect. So you can't just pick and choose where they're going to go. You have to be tactically minded. And it's made even worse by the individual initiative system, which I've come to hate deeply playing Baldur's Gate 3. I just want initiative by side, and Baldur's Gate 3 has made me want initiative by side even more. I don't care if the enemy goes first in a round, and then I go, and then I go first, and then they go, or vice versa. The enemy goes and then goes again, and then I go because they want initiative for the second round. I care that all of my characters can go together with their actions at the same time, picking and choosing our actions, and then the AI setting up their actions, and then bam, everything plays out, and everybody moves, and everybody acts, and a lot of unforeseen things occur. That would be a cool way to play a video game, to set up all of these actions and for unforeseen things to occur. But anyways, back to area of effect spells. A lot of your really powerful damaging spells are area effect spells. And so you have to limit what you're doing. And when the enemy gets in and among you, you can't use your really powerful damaging spells because you're gonna hurt your own party. And so they have this mechanic in 5th edition, apparently, and I'm only knowing 5th edition through Baldur's Gate. So whatever departures they made from 5th edition are I don't know about because I've never played 5th edition at the table. I found myself using magic. They have this mechanic where you can cast a low-level spell using a higher-level spell slot, and it will improve the low-level spell, but not make it as good as high-level spells. You can cast Magic Missile as a 5th level spell, and it will give you more individual missiles. So it's much, much better than it would have been as a 1st level spell, even as a higher level caster casting a 1st level spell. So I found myself casting Magic Missile as like a 5th level spell or a 4th level spell because it could be a sniping spell that never missed. Instead of wasting my 1/6 level spell slot on, for example, Disintegrate, which has an 85% chance of missing, I could
Disintegrate is never a waste. How dare you?
I could just throw a Magic Missile out that does in the same vicinity of damage, but absolutely won't miss. And I could just snipe one person. So if I had a party member who was charmed, or a party member who was slowed, or a party member who was sleeping, I could target the one mage who was doing it and just blow them away with this overcharged Magic Missile that would never miss. And it would take 1 or 2 Magic Missiles, but it was guaranteed to hit and would do a lot of damage as an overcharged spell. I don't know that that's actually optimal for Baldur's Gate 3. I'm sure there's better tactics, but it worked. But those limitations are built into the game for a reason. The limitation of most of your high-level damage spells have an area effect are built into it for a reason, because it forces you to have to target things. And in Baldur's Gate 3, the nice thing is it also does environmental damage. So if you use Fireball spell promiscuously, it'll blow up crates, and those crates will have treasure in it. Some of that treasure is flammable, and it's gone. You'll blow up ladders to higher levels where treasure exists, and it's gone. And you'll have to figure out ways to get up there. So your jump skills or gaseous form or flying potions or whatever, you have to use those up to get up the ladder you blew up, or jump down and take damage. There are reasons for these limitations. And when you take away all the fiddly, annoying limitations, like, and I'm talking now about the table, like people taking away encumbrance. Big mistake. Fiddly and annoying to keep track of, vitally important for forcing players to think in terms of the concrete material world in which their characters exist, and makes it important for them being forced to make choices. Taking away limitations fosters this build culture. And I hate it.
It's been a scourge on the hobby since, in D&D, it's been a scourge since 3rd edition. And ever since before then, with your generic systems like GURPS and such, where everything's sort of a build based on building blocks, because game designers are so clever that they will create building blocks to create characters out of, instead of having a whole character in mind. Something that springs out of the kind of Pulp Fiction that inspired these games. You don't need building blocks to create Conan. Conan is a whole idea, and you can have a whole series of characters inspired by Conan. You don't need to build on whatever feats and spells and abilities that a Conan might have.
Yeah, I don't like it. I just don't like the culture. I don't like There are videos, there are rafts of videos out there about here's how to do this build, here's how to do that build, here's how to do the other build. And
It's a lot like a collectible card game. It's although a lot less sophisticated. It's a solvable problem, and so it's interesting to people as a puzzle. Building characters is interesting to people as a puzzle, and creating or coming up with various character builds is kind of a way of self-expression. Hey, yeah, I won D&D my way. I came up with this great combination of abilities, um, and and I'm really clever because of it, or it was satisfying because of it. I'm not saying that's a good thing for a game, and I'm not saying that I want to play with those people because I don't think I do. But the we have been running the opposite direction, right? Regress harder, go back to pulp inspired characters, go back to thinking about D&D as a war game, thinking about the broader actions in the world, that when you narrow down the scope of your game to how cool or how effective can your character be in a fight with a monster, when you pull out that scale and you think about, how cool, when is my character going to be able to lead armies? When is my character going to be able to maintain a castle? When is my character going to ascend to demigod or something like that, right? Those sorts of things. That generates interesting gameplay. When you think about your alignment and your role in the party and your role in the world and your goals, that creates the situations that create fun, large-scale interactions with the game master and with other players. This isn't the same kind of fun that you get out of a build system where you're playing multiplayer solitaire like a board game. Those can be interesting and fun and satisfying, but you're wasting the promise of a role-playing game. You're just throwing all those great things that you get out of a role-playing game for the cheap, unsatisfying thrill that you get out of a board game or a card game. And I love board games and I love card games, but role-playing games do something that they can't. On that note, and I want to go back to the Dunder Moose show that I mentioned. If you want to think about the broader implications of your characters, if you want to zoom out beyond just the dungeon and the party that you're working with, have a listen to that other podcast. Has B-Dubs got a challenge for you? Everybody playing in the Broasar is challenged to, well, I don't know if I should spoil it. You should probably listen to the show. B-Dubs lays down a challenge. Players have to act in-game and generate something great, something beyond the dungeon, something that harkens back to those grand war games. Get your head out of the rules optimization mindset. Get out of the build mindset. Get out of the group of 4 characters mindset. You can and will build something great. And if you don't, B-Dubs is going to know. Your dungeon master is going to know. And you're going to miss out on a lot of experience points for it. I'll leave it at that. Go check that out and enjoy it.
I'm not through with Baldur's Gate 3. Hopefully I'll finish it this week. And hopefully I'll be able to get a full review off maybe next week. Not next week because we won't be doing next week, but next show, week after next. We will not be doing a show next week.
Nope. But I'm looking forward to it. I want to hear what you have to say at the end of it.
And I'm almost done. I'm getting really close to the end. In Baldur's Gate has been a lot of fun. Baldur's Gate 3 has been a lot of fun. So I would really like to see them or someone use this style of game to tackle a Shadowrun game. Just a big, huge world done in this sort of isometric style with free rotation. Not as closely tied to the Shadowrun mechanics necessarily, but yeah, I think it would be cool. Anyway, moving on, because even though I thought, oh yeah, we'll get out of this real quick and then we'll start reviewing. Nope, it's half an hour in and it's time to start reviewing. Because we do this every time.
I don't know why you expect it to go any other way.
I don't know. I just did. I thought, yeah, we'll get this done. We'll do just some quick D&D and then jump right into. No, we didn't. We did. I'm just a fool. I'm just a fool for love. That's it. Just I want to say this. I don't want to make people more. I don't want to raise your expectations beyond where they should be, but Bad Boys Ride or Die is the best movie I've seen this year, and it's the best action movie I've seen since one of the John Wicks, maybe John Wick 4, maybe John Wick 2.
Wow. High praise. Low bar, but still high praise.
Bad Boys 3 was made by the same people, but it was kind of a mediocre movie. I didn't like it. Didn't like the story very much. I didn't think it was done well. These same filmmakers have had some more experience under the belt, and they came back and they just knocked this one out of the park. It is fantastic. It is fast moving. It's got a good story. It's got a simple story that is a good story, and the action scenes are awesome. It is clear where it needs to be clear. It stays focused where it needs to stay focused, and it uses dynamic shots that are controlled, that look sometimes like shaky cam, but it's not shaky cam. They're not throwing in random jostling of the camera. They're using motion in the shot to move your attention from one thing to another, to control your point of view, to keep the shot dynamic and to focus on different things that are happening. This is the first movie I've seen where drone shots, you still know they're drone shots, and they're kind of new technology. And I say new in quote, air quotes, because it's been, what, a decade since we started using drones? Is that right?
Yeah, longer.
Okay.
Obama administration minimum. I think late Bush administration.
They still kind of stand out because they're drone shots and it's kind of new. But they are used naturalistically to produce shots that only drones can do, and they're done in such a beautiful and amazing way. This is the first time I've really seen the drone technology begin to grow into its own. They have one long shot where this fight scene is going on in this big room, and there's like 6 main characters, and each of them is doing something different. And the drone moves through the room really rapidly, shifting focus from one character to another character to another character. And in a fight scene, what you have is A doesn't move, B doesn't move, and you watch that for a little bit, then you shift to another character who is the next in line, and A doesn't move and B doesn't, or C doesn't move and D doesn't move. And it's kind of like the difference between group initiative and individual initiative, right? Where
Well done.
And this shot gives you the feel of group initiative. It gives you the feel of all of these things in this big fight are all happening at the same time. Like all of these things are happening at the same time. Like they're not just little subsequent snapshots of combat. And it was fast paced and it was fluid, and you're just moving through this room and zooming around and panning up and panning down. And I was literally so many times in this movie, I was cheering in my seat. I pounded on my chest. I was saying, hell yeah. Uh, I was excited. My blood was pumping. I I was jazzed when I came out of this movie. I was so jazzed when I came out of this movie. I was so excited. I cannot tell you the last time an action movie made my blood pump. Just, I love action movies. I love action movies. And this action movie drew you into the action. It threw stuff at you, but not in a way that you couldn't see what was going on. They did it in a way where they controlled what was on the screen so you knew what was happening every minute of the movie. Every shot was focused and controlled, but it was exciting and it moved and it was fabulous. And these guys, they have bought the right for me to go see anything they make from now on. I don't care what they make. I'm gonna go watch it because they deserve, like Michael Bay, they deserve to have me go and watch their movies just to see what they do next. This movie was fun and like Bad Boys is a mixture of high octane action, humor, and some cringe. It was there in the original movie. It was there in the sequels. And without any of those three things, it's not a Bad Boys movie. And this movie had great humor. It had great action. One of the Bad Boys' minor characters is Martin Lawrence's daughter was dating a Marine. And in the last movie, she marries the Marine. And in this movie, the Marine gets his own action scene. And he is absolutely an ass kicker. He just gets to wail on some bad guys, and it is a fabulous scene. It is just great, and you're like, damn, that boy be kicking all the ass. Pardon my vulgarity.
Dang, that was extra vulgarity.
So the action scenes are varied. Other characters other than Will Smith and Martin Lawrence get some great time in. It's good to see they get a character from the first Bad Boys who gets a callback and gets to show up again. If you've seen the original Bad Boys, you'll remember him, and it's a nice callback when he shows up. It's awesome what they did with this character. So they pay homage to the original, and there's a difference between callbacks and member berries. Member berries are just like, oh, hey, here's this thing, and they just throw it in kind of thoughtlessly. And it doesn't really have anything to do. It's just, ATSTs. And I'm quoting from a Red Letter Media video there, if you remember it. It's become a meme now. It's literally a GIF people quote all the time. And this movie has callbacks to things we've seen before in the series, but not too many of them, just a few. And they're callbacks done in a different way, where characters are brought back to show that they've grown and they've changed, and they now fit in to the world in a different way. And it's just a lot of fun. It shows genuine affection for the audience, genuine affection for the earlier movies, genuine affection for the um, characters, and genuine affection in that the characters have grown and changed. Mike Lowry, who is now, because Will Smith is older. He's now into his 50s. He's getting married at the beginning of the movie. He's been this eternal bachelor through 3 movies. And last movie, he had some things happening that spurred some emotional growth. So in this movie, he's finally found someone to settle down with, and he's finally getting married. And the actress playing her is just gorgeous. They've got beautiful women, they've got masculine men, they've got fast action, just amazing gunfights. I loved the gunfights so much. And I'm sure there are plot holes in it. I'm sure that you could come along after the movie and go back and say, oh, this doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense, or how do they know this, or how do they know whatever. I don't care. It was a great movie. It was a fun movie. I talked about last time how I went to my movie theater and the tickets I had bought were like only $6. Well, the only tickets that were available for this movie were like in the luxury seating. That was the only showing I could get to today. And so they were $3 more. It was, I think, $10 for this movie. And I have one of those, one of those cards that goes in and they keep track of everything I've bought so I get points. I'm like, do I have anything I can use to get points on this? He's like, oh yeah, you got a $10 off thing, and that didn't work. So I didn't get $10 off. But didn't matter. I still had, it was worth it. A $10 ticket was worth it to go see this movie. It made my whole day. It made my whole week. It made my whole month. It may have made my whole year. And I am so sad that the economic difficulties and people's fatigue with trash has made this movie not as successful as it could be, because it's absolutely fabulous and people should go see it. That's my review of this movie.
Absolutely glowing, gushing even.
Um,
To your point on the box office, unlike the snooze fests of Furiosa, just pulled out of something like 800 theaters after only 2 weeks. And the Fall Guy, which was a decent popcorn flick, but basically isn't making any money. Bad Boys is doing well for itself.
is it?
Perhaps not as well. Perhaps not as well as it should be, given if it's as good as you say. But it's basically showing the lie to people who claimed that it's just the audience or the economy that are keeping them away from the theaters. Maybe theaters are dying, but we all know that it's because they keep producing mediocre crap. All you gotta do is make a good film, and we'll go see it.
I think that Bad Boys 3 being such a mediocre follow-up kind of depressed the audience for Bad Boys 4 below where it should be, but I'm hoping word of mouth brings people back. If I had the time and I had the money, I would go back and watch this movie again in the theaters. Like I said, the movie theater is a half-hour drive to me, away from me, so I generally only go see movies in the theaters that I know I'm going to want to review for the show, because it's hard. But I would definitely go see this movie again a second time. And I don't remember the last time I saw a movie the second time. It was one of the John Wicks, I think. But movies just don't motivate me to go see them a second time anymore. This movie I would go see a second time. It was that good. The transition here between this movie and Gone in 60 Seconds. This is the Nick Cage Gone in 60 Seconds. Bad Boys 3 and 4 are sequels to Bad Boys 1 and 2, obviously. Bad Boys 1 and 2 are both Michael Bay movies, who is a phenomenal action director. And I love Michael Bay. I love Michael Bay movies. And I'm not saying he hasn't made bad movies, because he has, but generally speaking, he makes phenomenal action movies. I love
That's
The
funny.
Rock.
That's funny because the wife and I have actually started rewatching all the Transformers movies, or in my case, watching them for the first time. And
No. Number 2 is awful. It's so bad.
number 2 is awful. 3 was the last one we watched, the last one with Shia. I really liked 3.
Yeah.
But it's definitely that Michael Bay reputation for more explosions.
4, I liked. A lot of people disliked 4, and 5 is a plunge off a cliff into a deep, deep chasm of awful.
Oh,
So, just my review. I don't want to taint you going in, but
too late. I'm biased now.
Anyway.
So we're talking about Michael Bay. So the thing that struck me about the Transformers movies is that there was a lot of great action in those first 3, and
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the reason why I never watched them after the first one, when they first came out, is that because it was empty. It didn't really. I wasn't excited. I wasn't charged. I wasn't like, wow. When the next one comes out, I'm pumped. I want to see more of that. It was just kind of bland and empty. There could be a million reasons for that. My guess is shaky cam and too much CGI, but really but anyway, great action, but these aren't his best, right?
No. And in between those, in between the Transformers, he made Pain and Gain and 13 Hours. And I think 13 Hours is quite possibly, it is Michael Bay. It isn't my favorite Michael Bay movie, but it's Michael Bay's, maybe his best movie he's ever made. And it's just a really incredible, well done movie. It is made about the 13 hours of those Navy SEALs who were defending the not embassy, but diplomatic outpost. I can't remember the proper name for the diplomatic outpost, from waves of terrorists that they just let overrun and murder the ambassador and the staff and these 4 Navy
You're talking about
SEALs.
Benghazi. You're talking about Benghazi.
Benghazi. It's a movie about Benghazi, and it is Consulate. Thank you. 13 Hours is a great movie. Yeah, it's a consulate, and it is. He was making the Transformers movie because every time he made a Transformers movie, the studio was making so much money, they would also finance these other passion projects that he couldn't get made any other way. So he was kind of sick of the Transformers movie and didn't want to make 4 and 5, but that's why he made them, is because they were financing Pain and Gain and Pain and Gain is a good movie. It's a really oddball movie, but it's funny.
I really like Pain and Gain. One of the few movies that manages to use The Rock correctly.
But that's why he was making those last 2 movies, is because he got 13 Hours and he got Pain and Gain financed. So, and those are some of his best work. So yeah, he got a little lazy with the Transformers movie because he got in to make those 2 movies that he really, really cared about. And they're both, some of his best work. But my favorite Michael Bay movie is still The Rock. Anyway, so the first 2 Bad Boys movies are definitely Michael Bay movies, and the next 2 Bad Boy movies are made with Michael Bay properties, and he makes He makes cameos in both movies, but they are not shot like Michael Bay movies. They are not trying to be Michael Bay movies. Bad Boys 3 had literally one Michael Bay-esque shot in it, where it was a low telephoto lens swooping around the car, and the rest of the movie was just bam, these two guys making their movie. And Bad Boys 4 was them just doing their own thing, absolutely amazing stuff. Gone in 60 Seconds is a Nick Cage movie, and I'm gonna flip off to it. It's got Nick Cage, Angelina Jolie, Giovanni Ribisi, um, Timothy Oliphant, and Robert Duvall in it.
Oh,
Robert Duvall is, you know, doesn't have a big role in it, and Delroy Lindo, who I love. But Robert Duvall, fabulous, does a great job in it. And it is as close to a Michael Bay movie as you can get without having Michael Bay make your movie. It's got Michael Bay angles, it's got Michael Bay's sort of super saturated color palette, it's got his short scenes and quick movement between scenes. Whoever made this movie set out to make a Michael Bay movie. Um, and I'm not saying that's wrong, and I'm not saying he failed, but it's very obvious that, in my mind, this is very obviously a Michael Bay-esque movie. Um, so we have one movie that was Michael Bay property, absolutely not a Michael Bay movie, still phenomenal action movie. It's Gone in 60 Seconds. This is the first time I've seen it. I mean, it came out in 2000. And I have never seen it before. So this is last week was the first time I've ever seen this movie. Everybody has been telling me I have to see it, I have to see it, I have to see it. So finally last week I got around to seeing it. My response has always been, yes, it's in the list. It is literally on the list of movies I want to watch. I own it. I own it. It's in my iTunes. Okay, I have like I have triple digit iTunes movies that I own, many of which, triple digits of which I literally haven't seen. So they're in my list to watch, and I'm going to watch them and going to review them. I just haven't got around to it yet. I promise. Triple digits. So you understand that I don't have time to watch them just for fun. I finally watched this, and it was so much fun. It was a great movie. It was rough in a couple of spots, but all the actors in it turned incredible to great performances. Um, there was an interplay between the older gang and the newer gang, the younger gang who were hip to some technology that was fresh and new in 2000. They had the car chases were great. The every time they robbed a car, they did different sort of car, um, different sort of techniques to rob the car that were, just fabulous. Just had so much fun with the different ways they robbed the car. Nicolas Cage is Nicolas Caging it, and uh, he turns in one of his performances. It's not his best performance. It's not his worst performance. And but he does a solid job. He does an entertaining job. And the movie was just a lot of fun. I had a great time watching this movie, and it may not be. It's not an accident that he's also, uh, you know, the star of my favorite Michael Bay movie, The Rock, is what it is because Nick Cage is in it, and he makes it just uh, a fabulous movie. And I'm going to say a name which isn't a super famous name, but Ari Gross plays the guy at the Mercedes dealership, and he is a character actor who's been in just a absolute ton of things, and he turns in a tiny performance that is a just a fabulous performance. If you've seen Soul Man, the 1986 movie, he's the main character's best friend. He is C. Thomas Howell's best friend, and so he's been in a ton of stuff since then, um, and and he's always a character actor. He generally has small roles, but he always knocks his role out of the park. Um, so uh, I wanted to shout him out for doing just a great job in uh, a really short but key part in the movie. Um, but I loved Gone in 60 Seconds, and I'm not sad I missed it in the sense that I could review it and come to it with fresh eyes and say, yeah, this is a phenomenal movie. And Angelina Jolie just does a tremendous job, and she doesn't have a lot of lines, but her screen presence is just amazing in this movie. She has a lot of charisma, and she's great on the screen. I think she deserved maybe a more prominent career than she had. As an actress, she was a famous actress, but if you look at her curriculum vitae, she didn't get as many roles as you would imagine her getting. My favorite roles of hers are Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and she make her and she makes just a fabulous movie. Her and Brad Pitt deliver a phenomenal movie, and I love Salt. I will always, always, always say Salt was a great and an unfairly overlooked movie. More people should have seen Salt. I recommend it highly. You should go see Salt. And her character in Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow should have been more prominent. The Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow would have been a better movie if it had been about her character and her kind of flying air base instead of Salt. Salt was amazing. It was like Anna, also amazing, or Nikita, which I haven't seen either of those. It's in the list. Trust me. But I have seen Anna, and I reviewed it on the show. Great movie. And also Ava is on the list, which is another movie in that little genre. So Bad Boys for Life, Gone in 60 Seconds, both great movies. If you haven't seen them, go see Bad Boys for Life in the theater. Well worth it. If you haven't seen Gone in 60 Seconds, watch it. If you have seen it, give it a rewatch, because both of them are well worth it.
Wow.
And now we come to American Horror Story.
Oh, I read one interesting note on Gone in 60 Seconds. I was just looking up the dates of release. Gone in 60 Seconds was from 2000. The Fast and the Furious came out in 2001. Something tells me that in a more just world, Gone in 60 Seconds would have had 8 sequels instead of the Fast and the Furious.
I wouldn't have minded that. As much as I love the Fast and the Furious series, which I really do, because it is a great movie series. It really is. I would like to see sequels to Gone in 60 Seconds. I think those characters, that situation, would have carried it.
You know, the problem is that the Fast and the Furious has something that Gone in 60 Seconds just couldn't beat. Family.
I tell you, Gone in 60 Seconds, my favorite scene, and the scene that a lot of the people love, the crew, and this is kind of a spoiler, but it's a 24-year-old movie, and I knew about this scene going in, and so you can't, the spoiler statute of limitations, to the extent that such a thing exists anymore, where movies are literally spoiled 2 days before their release, or sometimes weeks or months before their release. You can't get mad at me for this. Delroy Lindo, who plays a cop, is on the crew. He goes to the garage where they're planning their job, and they have this car that one of the kids has stolen that isn't on their list. Because the movie's about, and I just realized I did all this again. I reviewed the movies without telling people what the movies are about. So Bad Boys for Life is about two cops in Miami who have been partners since the 90s, and their captain, who got shot in the last movie, gets framed for being corrupt and supposedly in bed with the drug cartels running drugs into Miami since the early 2000s. They're angry about it. They think it can't be true. Played by Joey Pantoliano, and who you may remember as Cypher from the original Matrix. They go in, or the kind of bad guy from Memento. They go in to clear his name and have to go with Will Smith's bastard son from the last movie because he knows the cartel and was the assassin who shot the captain in the last movie. They have to kind of get with him. Fine. Gone in 60 Seconds. Nick Cage plays a car thief who was retired, but his little brother, who he got out of card thieving to keep his little brother out of getting into car thieving. His little brother went and got into car thieving and then got into trouble and is going to get killed unless Nick Cage comes out of retirement and steals 50 high-end automobiles in less than 3 days. So he has to put his old crew together and get together with some other guys to steal 50 cars in less than 3 days. That's Gone in 60 Seconds. So, sorry, I just assume people know who these movies are, and I need to stop doing that. Absolutely have to stop doing that. All the best movie review shows tells you what movie you're reviewing. So, Gone in 60 Seconds. They're in the garage. They've got this list up. They're planning on going to get the cars. They've got the list on a big blackboard. They've got all their car thieving tools out. And Delroy Lindo, who's this cop who's been chasing Nick Cage for over a decade, he shows up at the garage, shows up just to let them know he's on to them, just to rattle them and try to get them to make mistakes. And they have this vehicle that one of the kids stole that isn't on the list. And it's there. It's this hot car. And it turns out he just walked up to this car. It was parked outside this high-end poker game in this absolutely the worst neighborhood in the city. And he just drove away with it. And it turns out that the car he drove away with was a drug dealer's car. And they're like, do you have a thought in your mind as to why a car this nice would be sitting unguarded, unlocked, with the keys in the ignition in a neighborhood that bad? And the kid's like, no. And the kid looks like a Wish.com Keanu Reeves. If you've seen him, he was in a few movies around the 2000s. So they open up the trunk, and the trunk has got bricks of heroin in the trunk, as well as a sawed-off shotgun and some tools for committing robberies and stuff. And they're like, you idiot, we have to get this car out of here. And they put and then Delroy Lindo shows up when the car's trunk is open. These illegal weapons and burglary tools and bricks of heroin are out in view. And he starts pounding on the door. And they put all this heroin back into the car and slam it shut. And as Delroy Lindo walks into the garage, they notice that there's this tiny mound of heroin on the floor of the garage. And if he sees it, he's going to bust all of them. And everything is over before it begins. Bam, shot, whole thing gone. So Nick Cage starts engaging him in patter, saying, I know what you think. You think we stole this car. You think I stole this car and we stripped it out. You think I stole this car and stole out the engine. And Delroy Lindo goes, yeah, did you? Did you? And Nick Cage says, you know what? I'm sick of this. Here, take the keys. Get in the car. Check it for yourself. So he takes the keys, and Delroy Lindo's quoting, they're quoting like all the specs on the monster engine in this car. Because it's not a sports car, it's not an SUV, it's not a minivan, it's a muscle car, right? So it's got a big honking engine in it. And they're like, yeah, check it out, see it. And Robert Duvall walks up to the mirror on the other side, and they're egging him on to just, pound this engine as hard as he can. So he turns the engine on and he revs the engine, and it's going, and it's this low, thunderous engine, and it's blowing exhaust out. And fortunately, this little mound of heroin is right behind the exhaust. And one of his friends is standing there in the back, looking at the exhaust and signaling them. He's shaking his head because everybody knows what they have to do. They have to get him to rev this engine so hard that the exhaust is going so hard that it's going to blow away all of this heroin. So he doesn't catch him with this heroin and blows it. And this friend of his is Chi McBride. And I'm looking, on the IMDb page, you can see him. He's been in a lot of stuff. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous character actor. So he's, waving his hand to get him to do it. And so they're egging him on, and he's just blowing the engine harder and harder and harder, revving it up. And it's just absolutely fabulous. And finally, he blows all this heroin away, so you can't see the mound anymore. So it's just dust on the floor of this dusty garage. And it is just this fabulous scene. And everybody involved sells it so well. And it does so many things. It develops all the characters in the scene. It's a lot of tension. It shows that Delroy Lindo is smart. He's canny. He knows his cars. He's on to them. He's making them nervous. And it shows that they're smart and they're canny, and they get him to get rid of this evidence. But, and here's the key, here's the brilliant thing about this scene. This is why the person who made the script and the director who made the movie was so smart. On his way out of, you think this scene would make him look like a chump, would make this canny cop look like a chump. And if he got out of the garage and they just fooled him, it would make him look like a chump, which would drain the tension from the rest of the movie. He would look like an idiot. And the number of times they get away with stuff, they put one over on him, would make him look like an idiot. But he gets some evidence from the garage. They leave just one little thing out because they rush through the garage and hiding all their tools. They're flip the blackboard around. They're putting stuff underneath tarps because he doesn't have a warrant. He can't arrest them for anything unless he sees something. He can't search the place. But if they open the door and let him in, anything he sees is fair game. So as long as they hide stuff, he can't do anything. And if they're smart in hiding stuff, he's fine. They're fine. But he gets one key piece of evidence. So it shows that he's smart. It shows that he's observant. It reinforces that he's a real threat and he's not a chump. So despite the fact that they put one over on him in the scene and blew all the heroin away, it showed that he's not a chump, and it set him up to be a credible threat for the rest of the movie. And that's what was fabulous about the scene, is that top to bottom, it was constructed to tell a story, to be great, and to be tense, and to make everybody in the scene come off as great equals in this battle of the wits, so that you didn't have anybody looking like they were stupid. And it was just so good. Such a great scene. And
it sounds like really hard to pull off.
Yeah,
too.
it is. And most movies nowadays, they just don't seem to go that depth in the villains. They just don't seem to try to think their way through those situations. They make their bad guys chumps, and or not even deliberately make their bad guys chumps. They just seem to ignore the story part of movies. Hollywood has gotten into the habit of just making movies and they let the story part go. Hollywood has never been more technically proficient at making movies and never been less proficient in the art of storytelling. And it is storytelling and writing, characterization, personality, the mechanics of plot. It has never been more incompetent at making those things matter in movies. And both Gone with 60 Seconds and Ride or Die have great stories and they have great characterization and things matter. And that's where, the third Bad Boys movie really fell down. By the way, if you haven't seen the third one, it's kind of necessary to see the third one because it's not necessary. It's nice to have seen the third one when you go see the fourth. It isn't necessary, but it's nice. All the important bits you get. You understand the guy's Will Smith's son. He worked for the cartel. He was an assassin. That's really all you need to know. His mom was crazy. And Will Smith was the cause of her getting in jail. But if you've seen the third one, you'll immediately pick up off of that. Whereas if you haven't seen it, you'll just kind of need to pick that up in context or have heard me say it. I've just given you what you need to know. Absolute minimum you need to know from the third. So, yeah, it is.
Thanks for the primer because I'm probably going to skip the third one.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you. I really wouldn't blame you. But Will Smith was undercover with a Mexican drug cartel lady. They fell in love. They got physically involved. He sent her to jail. She was pregnant. She had a kid in jail. That kid grew up to be a cartel hitman. And the last movie was about Will Smith getting involved, not sexually, but that woman and her cartel hitman's son coming back, and they shot the captain, as well as did some other bad stuff. And Will Smith had to take care of business with him and Martin Lawrence, and the cartel son ended up in jail. Hard time. So those are the things you need to know about Bad Boys 3 going into Bad Boys 4. If you've seen Bad Boys 3, you'll know a lot more about it, but that's the absolute minimum you need to know. And now you know, folks. You can just go into Bad Boys 4. But, it's okay.
I love it. Hey, you know how much I love going into the theater. It's good to hear about another film worth seeing.
Actually, we're 10 minutes past the hour, so I'm going to skip American Horror Story. We just don't have time to do it.
All right. Well, hey, it's been great talking to you. I'm glad we could do this while I was out and about. And I really appreciate doing this, and I appreciate everybody who hung out with us. Let's see. I didn't have access to the chat tonight. Let me shout out some names. We had Simon Hogwood, Brian Jones, Bradford C. Walker, Mercurius Alicious. Really good to see you guys here. And I hope you come back next time, probably 2 weeks from now. And everybody listening later, go rent some classic action movies. And if you like playing D&D, check out that This Is Dunder Moose live show. That's all I've got to say.
All right, folks. We want to thank everyone who tuned in and listened live, participated in the chat. Thanks for jumping in. We always appreciate everyone who listens live. We always appreciate everyone who listens later. This has been Geek Gab. We're available at youtube.com/Geek Gab. That is youtube.com/Geek Gab. We are also available on SoundCloud.com, on the Google Play Store, and on the iTunes Store. Just do a search for Geek Gab. You can subscribe to us there. Download us to the device of your choice. Listen to us on the web. We make it all available there because we love you. Please Feel free to subscribe and click the bell icon to get announcements as to when we are going live, and click like if you like the video. We are signing off for today, folks. Geek Gab for Monday, June 10th, 2024. Signing off for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.